Okay, we start. Okay, we go live right now. Hello everyone. Thank you very much for watching right now. This is Marty from Space Explorer. And today we're very happy and honored to invite Mr. Michael Stroud to have lecture with us to talk about the Area 51. His presentation is going to be very, very wonderful, very good, and in very detail. He has done a lot of research. I'm going to start with Michael's bio. Michael currently is a private pilot, and he is an aerospace military historian. And he lectured across the country on the subject of mystery aircraft and the classified propulsion system. And he was the guest speaker in 2006 and 2007 for the Oshkosh. And he currently works at SolidWorks as a draftsman in Phoenix, Arizona. That's also where he resides. And also in an effort to expose government fraud, waste, and abuse, Michael devotes his free time researching aerospace technical documents and conducting interviews, traveling to many university archives. He believes U.S. Constitution obligation to question authority and the demand on accounting of special assets programs that bypass congressional oversight and public scrutiny. So right now I'm going to introduce Michael in Chinese, so please give me about 3 to 5 minutes. 各位大家好，我们很感谢 Michael 这次请到 Michael 来跟我们讲，他是一个私人飞机驾驶，他是个空军军事历史学家，是个神秘飞机飞行器的一个专门人员，而且他相当有研究，对于所谓的 military industrial complex， 就是军事工业联合组织，他是一个专家在这一方面。他曾经是空军军官，他是个战驾，然后呢，现在住在凤凰城亚利桑那州。他对揭发美国神秘黑色太空计划有相当深切的了解与研究，然后揭发美国政府的贪污。他相信这些美国政府有很多地方做得不好，可能有舞弊、浪费公帑以及滥用。所以他大部分的时间都在美国各大学做演讲，然后呢，也做了一些宪法义务的巡回跟学生的对话。然后呢，他也是这个公开的要求政府能够在会计部门能够公开，然后呢，也要求国会能够确实的监督与审查。我们现在就要来开始。Michael, so thank you very much, and it's our pleasure to invite you for this interview and speech. We're very happy for that. And we'll go ahead and start with your topic today. Today you're talking about the Area 51. That's a very famous topic, and also everyone loved that too. So we would like to have you to give us a very beautiful speech. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Marty. I really appreciate it. Glad to be with you today. I think the first thing that we should discuss is the fact that when you talk about Area 51, we're talking about 1955, the beginning of the U-2 spy plane program. That is the actual origin of Area 51. We know later on Francis Gary Powers was shot down on May 1st, 1960, but really, Area 51 got going to support U-2 spy plane operations under the direction of the Skunk Works director, Kelly Johnson. Now, if we fast forward all these decades later, I've got a document here, might be hard to see, but it says Area 51 unveiled at last. Okay, this is published in the LA Times on June 3rd, 2011. So from 1955 to 2011, the Air Force refused to acknowledge the existence of Area 51. It had been secret for all this time. It wasn't a well-kept secret. We all knew about it, but it wasn't officially acknowledged until 2011. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. Now, I've got some examples of the type aircraft that have been flown at Area 51. The A-12, which later became the SR-71, that flew in 1962. That later became the SR-71 at Beale Air Force Base. That's what you see here in this photograph. So that was a follow-on program. We have the F-117 stealth fighter. That flew at Area 51 during the 1980s. We have the Boeing Phantom Works Bird of Prey. Now, I've got some examples here of those aircraft as well. For the F-117, that was basically a Ben Rich design, and the predecessor to the F-117 was an aircraft called Have Blue. Two of these aircraft were built. They have since crashed. They've been buried at Area 51, and you can't see them anymore. But I want to bring a point here that during the 1970s and 80s, there was a competition that eventually narrowed down to two contractors, Northrop and Lockheed. Lockheed won the contract. They eventually developed the F-117. Now, Northrop's competitor to Lockheed's design was this aircraft. This is called Tacit Blue. A full-scale radar cross-section model was tested, and this was the competitor to Lockheed's Have Blue. A very low radar cross-section design. This is a larger scale model that you see here that I built, and I'm more than happy to give you a set of blueprints if you'd like to build this aircraft on your own, all free of charge, and you can build this so you have your own model of the Northrop XST. That was the competitor to Lockheed's design. Now, the person that we want to keep in mind throughout the stealth program was this gentleman right here. This is Ben Rich. He was head of Skunk Works between 1975 and basically 1991. He headed up the F-117 program. That was a critical program during the Cold War, was tested at Area 51. They eventually moved the operation to Holloman Air Force Base, and 59 aircraft were built. They were using Desert Storm. They had a very low radar cross-section. They have since been retired. Now, what is the aircraft that has essentially replaced the F-117? Well, I've got that aircraft right over here. None other than the $422 million per aircraft F-22. This has replaced the F-117. Now, there may be some other aircraft out there that we're not aware of. There's probably at least 12 to 24 secret classified aircraft that we don't even know about. It's been very, very good evidence to indicate that that is the case, that we have at least 12 to 24 classified aircraft programs that were procured, designed, built, and test flown during the Reagan administration that have since never been declassified. That's what we're dealing with right now. Yep. Okay, so now let's move on to the other group here. I've got a whole series of aircraft that I want to discuss really quickly here. We talked about the SR-71. I want to discuss a little bit more about F-117. That's this aircraft. Again, this is a program designed under Ben Rich. He was the replacement for Kelly Johnson at the Skunk Works. They originally built this aircraft at Burbank, California. Skunk Works at that point was moved over to Palmdale during the mid-1990s. And some of these aircraft, the classified aircraft that we're talking about, have been test flown at Air Force Flight Test Center Detachment 3, which is known as Area 51. That's what we're talking about tonight. It's actually an offshoot of Edwards Air Force Base, which is further north on Highway 14, past Lancaster, past Palmdale. So that's something we want to keep in mind. Radar cross-section for the F-117 was very low radar cross-section, very hard to pick this up on radar. because as the radar wave comes and hits the aircraft, the faceted flat plate technology reflects the radar away from the origin point, and that's how they're able to keep the RCS down. A number of other technologies they use there as well. I want to discuss the 3 aircraft in this photograph, showing you the U-2 spy plane, the SR-71, and the F-117. These are pretty much the critical aircraft that were tested at Area 51 during the Cold War. Now, getting back to Area 51, there's been a lot of controversy around Area 51. Now, what do I mean by controversy?
Yes.
Well, if you take a look at this photograph, might be a little bit difficult to see, but you'll see a number of buildings here in the foreground, and then in the background, residential areas. So what are we talking about here? Well, take a look at this. This is published in the Las Vegas Review-Journal. The date is 3/20/94, okay, 3/20/94, groomed for secrecy. And then they say, Groom Lake toxic burning alleged. So what they were doing during the early to mid-1980s is Lockheed in Burbank, California, when they were building the radar-absorbent materials that they would place on the F-117 stealth fighter, that's this aircraft right here, when they were building, making the solvents, the chemicals, and resins, all of that material was put into these 55-gallon drums, loaded on trucks, and drove all the way from Burbank, California, all the way to Area 51, a long drive. That's a long drive to get there. Once they got there, they offloaded these 55-gallon drums into this big trench, and they started burning all these toxic chemicals and all these resins and radar-absorbent materials, and all that smoke would go over the residential areas and make the Area 51 workers sick. And a lot of workers died as a result of those toxic burnings. And there's multiple lawsuits going on to this day regarding these toxic burnings. Here it is again. Grooming. High Court keeps Groom Lake a secret. Okay, so what are they doing? What are they doing? They're burning things. That's one thing they're doing. They're building classified aircraft. They're building drone systems. They're using electrochromic panels. That's another one here. Area 51 burning. Ex-officer says he oversaw destruction of stealth coatings. Okay? This is for Las Vegas Review-Journal 9307. So it's another real good example of the toxic burning that they've been doing in Area 51. You can get to Area 51 by going north of Las Vegas, around 90 miles, heading on Highway 93 north, and then you take it to Highway 375. You can break left on Groom Lake Road, and you as a taxpayer are allowed to drive all the way up to the perimeter gate, but no further. That's it. That's as far as you can go. Billions of dollars of tax money has gone into that facility, and the American taxpayer has no need to know what's going on in that facility. That's the mentality of the U.S. Air Force and other operators. There's some truth to that, because they are operating systems there and testing things that generally are designed to protect the national security of the United States. And there's some truth to that. However, there are a number of classified black budget programs that have been designed and built at Area 51 and test flown there in the 1960s, 70s, 80s that can be declassified without representing any threat to the national security. And yet those programs are still black and classified to this day. So there's this controversy that's been going on for decades. What are they really doing at Area 51? Let's get another example. This was declassified during the Bush administration. In 2002, they declassified this aircraft, Boeing Phantom Works Bird of Prey. 38 test flights were made. It was the first aircraft to use single-piece composite aircraft construction, 3D virtual reality design. It was kind of a predecessor to a lot of unmanned aerial vehicles that we see today. But from what I've been told, This aircraft, although it was a success, it was kind of underpowered. It was said to be a dog to fly. It wasn't very super maneuverable aircraft. That's what this aircraft looked like. Boeing Phantom Works bird of prey. Low radar cross-section design, extremely low radar cross-section. You can see there's almost no seams to this aircraft. There's no rivets. There's essentially no fasteners. It's all single-piece composite aircraft construction. Single-piece, one pilot. It currently resides at the Air Force Museum in Dayton, Ohio, if you want to see this particular aircraft. This was a Boeing proprietary aircraft. So this is not something that you can file a Freedom of Information Act request to get more information on it. It's a Boeing proprietary design. So those type requests, they just don't get you any. Here's another article here.
Yes.
Out of the Black, How Bird of Prey Advanced Stealth. They talk about it here. Yeah. This is Flight International 29 October, November 2002, exactly when this aircraft was declassified. Here's one. Another example here, Advanced Stealth Prototype, Boeing Phantom Works Bird of Prey. This is from Aviation Week Space Technology, October 28th, 2002. They did discuss it as well. So that's another example. So we've got U-2 spy plane, we've got F-117, we've got A-12, we've got SR-71, F-117, Boeing Phantom Works Bird of Prey. But we're missing a whole group of aircraft that we don't know about.
Yes.
We don't know about at least 12 to 24 designs that are still classified black budget programs to this day. Difficult to pin down exactly what those aircraft might look like, who the contractors were. We know that Lockheed has a facility there, Northrop has a facility there, Boeing has a facility there, McDonnell Douglas had a facility at Area 51, and Hughes Aircraft Company also had a laboratory at Area 51. Now, how do you get to Area 51? I want to address that. How do you get to Area 51? Here's the map on how you get to Area 51 if you want to go there yourself. Now, don't go beyond the perimeter gate or you'll be arrested or worse. But you can get to Area 51, as I mentioned before. You take Highway 93 north from Las Vegas, and then you continue on to Highway 375, and then you'll turn left on Groom Lake Road. That's right here. That takes you right here to this area, and it'll take you to the perimeter warning sign. That's as far as you can get. You don't want to go any further than that. So that's essentially what we're dealing with at Area 51. At this point, all bets are off. What they're doing now, we've heard from Ben Rich that they're working on things. They have things flying in Nevada. According to Ben Rich, they have things flying in Nevada that are 50 years beyond what you can comprehend. If you've seen it on Star Wars or Star Trek, we've been there, done that, or decided it wasn't worth the effort, coming directly from Ben Rich. So if you think about what that really means, what that could mean, we could be designing incredible aircraft that seem to defy the laws of physics. Yes. And that's really where we're at this point. 50 years beyond what we could even comprehend. That's what we're dealing with at this point. And so that's just kind of a brief overview of some of the programs that have been ongoing at Area 51.
Yes. Thank you. So as far as Area 51, is there the facility regarding to their design and also their hangar? Can you talk a little bit about that for the hangar and also inside the Area 51?
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, I'll give you a quick overview here. Let's talk about the building. Well, if you go back to the map here, at this location, the runway at Area 51 is over 25,000 feet long. So let me put that in perspective. If you have a 25,000-foot runway, you could land a space shuttle on one side of the runway and another space shuttle on the other side of the runway. In between these two space shuttles, you'd still have 5,000 feet left over. That's how long this facility is. There's multiple hangars there left over from the SR-71 program. Those hangars are also now being used in another hangar for the mating and demating of a two-staged orbit spaceplane program called the Black Star program. They're building new hangars there now. The residential, as we mentioned before, the residential areas are there. They have the laboratories from Lockheed and Boeing at that facility. They have a fuel storage facility at Area 51, no question about it. They have something called Sam's Club, which is a bar at Area 51. They have a baseball diamond there. I heard they have a swimming pool there as well. Now, there's been questions about underground facilities at Area 51.
Yes.
I have not been able to conclusively prove or come across evidence to suggest that there may be underground facility. Now, there could be. I don't know that for sure. But from what I've been told, everything there is above ground. Mm-hmm. There is the possibility that something could be underground at Area 51, but I just can't prove that with what I've seen. So bottom line, we've got a 25,000-foot runway. We've got residential facilities. We've got multiple hangars left over from the Cold War that were used during the program where American pilots were flying Russian MiG aircraft. We've got those hangars there. We've got the fuel cells there. We've got the control tower there. So for anyone to say that Area 51 is closed, that's not consistent with what's going on. There's nowhere else in the world you're going to get a 25,000-foot runway like Area 51. So operations are still ongoing at Area 51. Now, I want to give you an example of the type aircraft I'm talking about that may be mating and demating at Area 51. That's over here on this binder. I'll pull that up real quick. Starting around 1986, we started getting these reports of what may be a two-stage orbit spaceplane system, something that could launch satellites, something that could launch weapon systems, and that's this aircraft right here. After the Challenger explosion, there was a call to the contractors, Boeing, Rockwell, McDonnell Douglas, and Lockheed, to design and build and test fly a two-stage-to-orbit spaceplane system that could launch a parasitic aircraft from the bottom portion of the aircraft that you see here in this diagram. It appears that they actually did make a breakthrough. This is called the SR-3 or Black Star system. It is designed to airdrop a smaller aircraft. That's what you see in this illustration right here. This is the small aircraft that's dropped from the belly of the mothership, being tested at Area 51 after the Challenger explosion, probably went operational right around 91, 92 time frame. It was seen by multiple eyewitnesses in California, in Salt Lake City, Utah. It has been seen in multiple areas. Let me give you a blow-up here of what this aircraft looks like. Here's the blow-up on the Speedy two-stage-to-orbit spaceplane. Now, there's two versions of this. There's a 65-foot version and a 90-foot version. The 65-foot version has a crew of 2. The 90-foot version has a crew of 1. Starting up on the section right here, hopefully we can see this. The aircraft uses 4 linear aerospike engines that use basically it's a gelled boron fuel that has the consistency of toothpaste. Bottom view here, the entire bottom section is composed of space shuttle tiles taken directly off the space shuttle. It has at least 4 grooves on the bottom of the aircraft too. These act to strengthen basically the body and lower section of the aircraft. Over here you can see the flaps that were extended when it was seen by an F-15 pilot at Holloman Air Force Base. This is back in 1994. Yes. Upper section here has a Q bay for launching rods of God and military satellites. The landing gear on this aircraft is very unique. It has a front nose gear, it has 2 outrigger wheels for the wings, and it has a central landing skid below the center line of the aircraft. Now, what actually does this look like? Try to give you a better illustration here. Something happened in 1994 There's some very good evidence to indicate that something happened with this Black Star program in 1994. There was a mishap between the launching of the mothership, the launching of the parasitic aircraft. As it was airdropped, somehow it may have hit the mothership and it crippled the speedy parasitic aircraft. This aircraft made an emergency landing at Kadena Air Force Base in Japan. It was coming in at Mach 4.2. Other aircraft were diverted from the area. When they got it to the runway and it landed, it was taxied into a hangar, and then immediately a C-5 Galaxy was flown to Kadena Air Force Base, picked up the aircraft, flew it back to Holloman Air Force Base, and this is what it looked like when it returned from Holloman Air Force Base. This is the C-5 Galaxy showing you it being unloaded from the C-5. There was a tarp covering the tail of the speedy aircraft, and there were military personnel there. This was all seen by an F-15 pilot who was about a quarter mile away. He sketched on a sketch pad what he saw, and this illustration is based off of his original sketch. I've got an enlargement here that shows you a little bit better. This is the enlargement, giving you a little bit better idea of what the unloading process looked like at Holloman Air Force Base. This is back in 1994. So that's another aircraft that it looks like it was developed and test flown at Area 51. Some of the preliminary designs. This is another illustration here of the speedy aircraft. Here it is being unloaded. In this illustration, you can see the landing gear a little bit clearer.
Yes.
You can kind of see the linear aerospike engines on the back side of the aircraft. Again, this aircraft travels, it can go between Mach 17 and Mach 20. They can be anywhere in the world in less than 3 hours with this particular program. So that's just another example of an aircraft that was tested at Area 51. This is the original sketch by the primary eyewitness that saw this aircraft. Here's her original sketch as this thing flew overhead. So we've got at least, there's probably at least 12 eyewitnesses that have seen this aircraft. Recently interviewed a woman who saw this aircraft not too far from Culver City, California, around the same time frame. We need to give credit to Bill Scott, who's the former Rocky Mountain editor of Aviation Week Space Technology. He wrote this article, Aviation Week Space Technology, March 6, 2006. Got to give credit to Bill Scott, who had been following this aircraft for 16 years. It wasn't until the sighting of James Petty over Salt Lake City that they had enough firepower to go ahead and publish this article. That's why this article got published. It was because James Petty had his sighting. Now, regarding the F-15 pilot, here's his original sketch of what that aircraft looked like. So the color illustration that you saw is based off of his original sketch from an F-15 pilot. So I tend to trust the credibility of an F-15 pilot. They're certainly a credible group of individuals. When you talk about military pilots, they're a very credible breed. Now, we'll also discuss here original sighting by Chris Gibson. Keep in mind, this is back in 1989. This is the sighting that started the whole Aurora craze. Now, over the Galveston Key offshore oil drilling platform, he saw a KC-135, and then on the left side of the KC-135, this is an overview looking down, there were two F-111s with their wings extended. You can see in this illustration. In back of the KC-135, there was a 75-degree swept wing black triangular aircraft being refueled, it looked like, by the KC-135. Chris Gibson was trained by the Royal Observers Corps to identify any military aircraft in less than 2 seconds. He could not identify this aircraft. Try to get a little bit better view here. To this day, it's unknown what this aircraft is, but this remains one of the deep black programs of the military-industrial complex. No doubt about it. Here, another report to go over the existence. This says right here, U.S. Flying New Spy Plane Report says. This is Seattle Times 12/6/92. This is the exact same time frame as the eyewitnesses to the Black Star program. Exact same time frame. It's also the same time frame that many sonic booms were being heard over the Antelope Valley area, also the Southern California, Los Angeles basin, over Catalina Island. They would be hearing these booms over Los Angeles, going over Palmdale, going over Mojave, going over Edwards Air Force Base, and heading toward Area 51, always on a Thursday morning, and usually the last Thursday of the month. So like clockwork, this has been going on. What is that aircraft? We could be looking at the prototype for the Black Star program or another program. We could be looking at that. Here is a patent. Here's a patent right here. It might be difficult to see.
Yes.
This is Boeing patent US 4,802,639. This is from the Boeing company, talking about a two-stage-to-orbit spaceplane system with the parasitic aircraft being airdropped from the mothership below on the belly of the mothership. This is exactly the Black Star configuration that was most likely built during the late 1980s and then went operational in the early 1990s. Here's another one, mystery plane, right? Why is America's super spy plane aircraft still a secret? This is Washington Post 12/3/92, exact same time frame as the other articles. No question about it. We can move on to the other configurations here. Remember we talked about the Thursday morning airquakes. Here's an article. This is San Francisco Chronicle 4/18/1992. Here they have the question, weird jolts, no quakes in San Gabriel Valley, always on a Thursday. Again, repeat, this is San Francisco Chronicle 4/18/92. They're not talking about earthquakes in this article. They're talking about airquakes, something that's going very fast, booming the whole area, and then just moving on and perhaps landing at Area 51. Here's another article. Anderson Herald Bulletin, April 18th, 1992. California rumbling, sonic boom, not quake. Even they're saying it's not an earthquake, it's a sonic boom, always on a Thursday. So something is being tested at that time. No doubt about it. This is another one. U.S. Flying New Spy Plane Report says. Reference for this, Seattle Times 12/6/92, on a Thursday. Now, we keep hearing this again and again. Thursday, Thursday. Why Thursday? Why is it on a Thursday? Well, from what I've been told, the reason why it's a Thursday is because Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are used for pre-flight of an aircraft. Thursday's the test flight. Friday's debrief. Generally speaking, Saturday and Sunday, there's a skeleton crew at Area 51. So that's why Thursday is reserved for test flights. So when you hear about a classified aircraft maybe being tested on a Thursday, you can bet it's one of ours. You can bet it's one of ours. Here's one more, just to prove the point here. San Francisco Chronicle, this is perhaps the same article, 9/18/92, odd rumblings puzzle residents of LA area. Another, I've got at least 12 different articles talking about these Thursday rumblings, always on a Thursday. So, we've already talked about that. I also want to talk about other aircraft that may be tested at Area 51. We've got boomerangs, we've got triangles, we've got cigar-shaped craft, we've got dish-shaped craft, we've got what are known as platforms or rectangles. Those are now being tested. So what we should do at this point is we should talk about Hudson Valley Boomerang. It's a very important case to this whole thing because it may have an Area 51 connection. Between 1982 and 1989, at least 25,000 eyewitnesses reported a large boomerang-shaped craft, the size of an aircraft carrier, the size of a football field, hovering silently over a three-state region on the east coast of the United States. This is 82 to 89, 25,000 eyewitnesses. Witnesses reported multicolored flashing lights. They reported a very low, silent, almost silent, low-frequency humming noise. They reported tubes, pipes, and cylinders on the bottom of these aircraft. They also reported translucent panels where you could look up inside the vehicle, showing and exposing the cross-beam and girder construction like a truss bridge. So instead of me just telling you about this, let me show you what we're talking about. So what we're dealing with here basically is something that look almost identical to this right here. Hudson Valley Boomerang. This is March 24th, 1983, when this took place. Hundreds of people on the Taconic State Parkway in New York, in Connecticut, pulled off to the side of the road, slammed on their brakes, got out of their car, and were looking up at this gigantic boomerang-shaped craft with a light shining down. This was on a Thursday night, just like the test flights. Hundreds of people, thousands of people saw this craft. It was making these 180-degree flat turns, like on a pinwheel. Very interesting rotation.
Does that look like Phoenix Light in 1995? Are they the same aircraft? The 1995 Phoenix Light, are they the same aircraft or a different one?
The 1995 Phoenix, you mean 1997?
1997 Phoenix,
sure,
Phoenix Light, yeah.
Right, March 13th, 1997. Yes, yes. I don't believe it's the same vehicle. I don't believe it's the same vehicle. Here's another illustration, shows you the Hudson Valley Boomerang. You can see the multicolored flashing lights. Again, this is anywhere between 300 and 900 feet across, yes, hovering silently over a three-state region. This is an illustration here over Westchester County, New York. That's what this aircraft was being reported, Westchester County, New York. I went ahead and did a large drawing here. This shows you all the configurations that were reported. This also shows you the tubes, pipes, and cylinders on the bottom of the aircraft. Very silent configuration. Now, I want to talk about what took place March 24th. I've got a detailed drawing here. This shows you the flight path, March 24th, 1983, 24 hours after Ronald Reagan gave his address to the nation when he highlighted the SDI program, or Star Wars program. This craft was basically following the Taconic State Parkway northbound from Millwood all the way up to Yorktown Heights. Anyone who's living in the New York area, in this area, would have known about this or perhaps even saw this. It was making this zigzag maneuver as it was going up. It was hugging the freeway as it was going north. Now, when it was doing that, and I pointed this out in my lecture here before, got a model here. Here's a model of the Hudson Valley Boomerang, and I've got the blueprints for this, so anyone who would like the blueprints, I'll be more than happy to give you you can build your own Hudson Valley Boomerang. As this craft was flying over the Hudson Valley Taconic State Parkway, it would stop, it would hover, and then it would shine this bright beam of light down on the cars below, and then it would do this maneuver, would do one of these turns like this, very slowly, without making a banking turn. See, it didn't do one of these kind of maneuvers, it did one of these flat banking turns. Now, this was also seen in the January 5th, 2007 Illinois Triangle case. This was also seen in the Belgium Triangle case, 1989-1990. The same type maneuver was seen. This flat banking turn was seen. Just an incredible type flight maneuver. Let's continue on here. I want to highlight a very interesting case that was seen by this woman right here, Monique O'Driscoll. She had a sighting in 1983 of the Hudson Valley Boomerang. Incredible eyewitness. In fact, she said that she could see diamond gridwork, mechanical structure on the bottom of the craft. This is her painting of what this aircraft looked like. She said she was so close she could hit it with a baseball. That's how close she was. Now what I've done here in this group of illustrations is I've shown you what aircraft flying in formation look like, okay? This is what aircraft flying in formation look like. Now, you can kind of keep a formation if all the planes are flying straight and level, right? It can be done if you're flying straight and level, but if you make a turn, the planes on the outside have to speed up and the planes on the inside have to slow down. Just physics would tell you that, okay? Again, here is the straight and level flight. That was the turn. Now, how in the world are you going to get planes to make a 180-degree flat turn without banking? No way. You can't get this kind of a maneuver out of planes, okay? It just doesn't work. So clearly, we're talking about something else here. I want to discuss what Monique O'Driscoll saw in 1983. Here's a top view looking from below, looking up at this aircraft. This aircraft flew over her car. Her daughter, who was also named Monique, was in the car with her as this thing flew over. And it basically flew over an area called Kent, New York, at a place called White Pond. This is 1983. As it flew over her car, it was virtually silent. It parked itself over a frozen pond, made a 180-degree flat turn, and all these lights, multicolored lights, were flashing on the bottom of this craft. That's what you see in this illustration right here. All these multicolored flashing lights, and she could see the reflection of the craft, of the lights on the frozen pond below. That's how low this thing was. It was only 60 feet off the frozen pond. So I went ahead here and I decided to build a scale model of what Monique O'Driscoll saw. So she also saw this 180-degree flat turn as well. And you can, if you want to make the blueprints off this one, I'll give you the blueprints and you can build your own. What was interesting about her sighting is she said that these multicolored flashing lights, they flashed in sequence, okay? So the reds would flash, then the yellows would flash, then the blues would flash, then the greens would flash, all up and down the wing of this craft. They were flashing in sequence. So there was an intent to this. There was an intelligent design to this. This wasn't haphazard. There was a design to this. Here's another craft that was seen as well. This was seen during the same time frame. This gentleman who saw this aircraft in the Hudson Valley area, he also saw these crossbeam and girder construction. He heard this low frequency humming noise. This is reported by multiple eyewitnesses in the Hudson Valley area. No question about it. This is a detailed drawing. It shows you the mechanical tubes on the bottom of the Hudson Valley Boomerang. She also talked about vent work and grills and diamond work on the bottom of this vehicle. A very mechanical understructure on the bottom of the Hudson Valley Boomerang. If you want to build the Monique O'Driscoll craft, this is what the blueprints look like.
Yes.
So I'll be happy to send you a PDF file and you can build your own.
Okay.
Just print this out on 11 by 17 cardstock and you can build your own
Beautiful.
Hudson Valley Boomerang. We should also discuss what took place on July 24th, 1984. This is a very interesting case. At the Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant in Buchanan, New York, Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant, something very incredible took place. There was a massive 900-foot wide shaped UFO hovering over the Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant, reactor number 2, for about 18 minutes. This was all at night. It was a 25-knot wind that night. This is an illustration of what it may look like. Now, this was seen by 12 security guards that saw this craft hovering over the reactor. Remember, 25-knot winds, so we're not talking about ultralights. We're not talking about planes flying in formation. They were looking at this craft. They were shocked. They were horrified. They didn't know exactly what they were looking at. but reports indicate that one of the security guards in this other building, in one of these buildings right here, he had a video camera placed on this. They caught the whole thing on film, and he said that they had to pan the camera 180 degrees just to get the whole thing in frame. This thing was over 900 feet across, hovering right over the reactor. This is all caught on film. That film has never been shown. To this day, that film has never been shown, and we probably will never see that film. It's just one of those cases where it's been classified to this day. So that's kind of a brief overview of the Hudson Valley Boomerang. I also want to talk about the triangles. We cannot talk about Area 51 without talking about the triangles. So let's discuss that. I'm going to definitely get into the triangles. Let's start with this case right here. This is seen in England. This is August 25th, 1990. I have the original case report from David Marler. He graciously gave me this report. This is an illustration of what this looked like. A couple were coming out of a music concert, driving down a dark road. It was around 11:59 p.m. This is back in 1990. It was kind of a rainy night, and out from this dark cloud comes this black triangle, about 200 to 300 feet per side. It was silent. There were some flashes that may be associated with this. He said that it had a white light at each corner of the aircraft. There was a white light in the center of the aircraft that you can kind of see here. There was a relieved section on the bottom of the aircraft showing what looked like crossbeam and girder construction, just like the Hudson Valley Boomerang. Keep in mind, this was a police officer with over 30 years of experience, so we're talking about a reliable witness here. So instead of me just talking to you about this case, I want to show you what this craft looked like. So I went ahead and built a scale model of this particular craft. Here is this is the completed design from the 1990 case. You can see the triangular configuration. You see the white light in the center. That was also seen in the Belgian triangle. You can see the girder construction. I'm not sure if I can zoom that in here, but you can see the girder, crossbeam and girder construction, and this relieved or indented section. He also stated that as this thing came down from this cloud, he saw in one of these lighted window sections what looked like two humanoid beings looking back at him, and it was his statement that these were military pilots. He said nothing about this was alien. He said that these were most likely military pilots, reinforcing his belief that this was a man-made craft. That's essentially his assessment of what that was. Now, we talked a little bit about the January 5th, 2000 case. This is an extremely important case. This is a famous case, made news all around the world, primarily around the United States. This is January 5th, 2000, where at least 3 police officers and 1 private citizen saw 3 different triangular configurations, and 1 configuration that looked like a box, single-story ranch house with a penthouse on top. The triangular configurations were as follows: an acute triangle with all the angles identical. There was a 75-degree swept wing triangular configuration with a rounded aft end, and then there was one that was more of a broad or wider triangle configuration. So what did this craft look like? Very similar to this illustration right here. You can see the white light at each corner. In some cases, they reported a red dot or blinking flashing light at the bottom section of the vehicle. This is January 5th, 2000. I want to give you the illustration.
What do you call this vehicle?
What was that?
What do you call this vehicle?
This is called the January 5th, 2000 Flying Triangle. That's what this was called.
Okay, I thought it's a TR-3B.
Not this one.
Not this one, okay.
Don't believe that this one was the TR-3B. Now, why can I say that? Because the sizes are a little bit different. The sizes of this do not match the sizes of the TR-3B. This was about 40 feet across. The TR3 was, according to Edgar Fouché, 300 to 600 feet across. So this is a slightly smaller vehicle. They also reported what looked like stacked Legos and pipes on the bottom of the Southern Illinois Triangle case. Melvern Knoll, who is the senior or primary eyewitness of this case, here is his original sketch of what he saw.
Yes.
Basically a box with a penthouse on top. This is an illustration that I put together based on his testimony. You can see the configuration of what he saw. A single-story ranch with a penthouse on top. He was coming home from a driving session since he was a truck driver. He was checking out his miniature golf course when he saw this craft float right by his miniature golf course. You can see the lighted window section right here. Here's the section that he saw with these lights. This is the single-story penthouse on top of the vehicle, slowly moving by, no more than a half mile away. And this thing was big, about the size of a football field. That's according to him. So those were the three aircraft that he saw. Newfound Journal did a good job with the configuration. These are the three different configurations of the triangles and the single-story ranch house that's also talked about in this article. So they did a good job there. Again, on the bottom section of the box structure seen by Melvern Knoll, there were multiple red lights. That's also seen on the Belgium Triangle and also on the Southern Illinois Triangle configuration. So we see this again and again, the red lights on the bottom of these vehicles. They serve a purpose. So if you want to build your own Southern Illinois box triangle by Melvern Knoll, these are the blueprints, so you can build your own.
Can you send me all these models, all these pictures to the model?
Yep, I can send you the blueprints.
Thank you.
This was an aircraft seen also at the same time frame. This was seen by a firefighter with 25 years of experience. This craft was shining lights down from the bottom of the craft, but the lights did not hit the ground. So these lights kind of like went a certain distance and stopped. Very interesting technology there. Now, this is interesting newspaper article. I thought it was very interesting newspaper article. It says right here, this is Collinsville Journal, Sunday, January 16, 2000. That's the reference for this article. Here it says, object in sky draws interest of UFO researchers, okay? And then it says over here, it says, officer says he is 98% sure object was experimental or military. We're not talking about alien aircraft here. We're talking about man-made vehicles. How can I prove it? How can I prove it? Well, if you look at the configuration of what this gentleman described, okay? Here's the drawing of what this gentleman described. He's describing a kind of a flattened triangle configuration with a red flashing light at the bottom, and then there was this strobing white light at the back. If you can see this right here, that was strobing across the back end. Let me read you just what he says here, directly from the eyewitness. It says, Officer Craig Stevens, he's the primary eyewitness, he stated that the craft tried to camouflage itself against the night sky and was projecting the star field above it on the underside. So if you think about what that means is, the craft was taking, just as a quick example here, let's say this craft is flying over the police officer. It was taking the image of the sky above it and the stars above it, and it was projecting that image on the bottom of the aircraft, essentially allowing it to blend in with the background, making it almost invisible. And so that is a technology that was born out by the May 1997 issue of Popular Science, where they talked about electrochromic panels being used on daytime aircraft configuration. So the technology was already done in the late 1980s, mid 1990s. It was already a done deal. They already have the technology. So I don't believe this was an alien craft, according to the eyewitness reports. I don't believe it was alien at all. Now let's go on to a craft that was seen in Monks, Kirby, England. This is 1999. Four people were coming out of a dinner engagement, went off to the left-hand side of the road. They saw this craft. It was hovering about 40 feet off the ground. It was banked at a 25-degree angle. The red lights here were this configuration. They saw the back of it first. Here's an illustration that I put together which shows you a little bit better view of what this craft actually looked like. It was hovering silently. As they got closer, this craft made a very interesting configuration. It made a very interesting maneuver. And so I went ahead and built a scale model of this craft. Here's what this looked like. This is what they saw when they came up to it on the road. As they got closer, they weren't just looking at four lights. They were looking at the back of a triangular type configuration. And as they got closer, it made this maneuver. It did one of these. It tipped up on end, showing you this very interesting interlocking, like raised box structure on the upper side of the craft. Very interesting configuration. So they pulled off to the side of the road behind some bushes, and when they looked back, this thing was gone. This thing was totally gone. So if you'd like to build a scale model of the Monks Kirby triangle that I've got right here, these are the blueprints. So you can build your own scale model of what this craft looks. So now we've got three separate cases. We should also discuss here, nothing would be complete without discussing the 1989-1990 triangular wave that took place in Belgium. Thousands of eyewitnesses, probably 10,000 eyewitnesses. What they reported were these silent triangles. Some of them reported a low-frequency humming noise. They also reported a spotlight coming down from the center of the craft, a light on each corner. They also reported tubes, pipes, and cylinders, just like on the Hudson Valley Boomerang craft. Identical configuration. In 1990, two F-16s from the Belgian Air Force attempted to scramble and intercept this craft. They never got quite as close as you see here, but they did catch this thing on their onboard radar, and this was confirmed by the Belgian government, which is an unprecedented event. You would never hear about that in the United States. It just wouldn't happen. They'd never talk about it. So here's the drawing on the Belgium triangle, showing you the tubes, pipes, and cylinders on the bottom of the vehicle. It also had a very interesting, not sure if you can see this, but a lighting configuration on some of these looked just like the 1980s TV hit series Knight Rider, where the light would be going back and forth, a strobing type effect. That was also seen on the back of the Southern Illinois Triangle. Let's continue on here. We can't talk about triangles without talking about the very famous TR-3B. Now, I want to ask you, Marty, what does TR-3B stand for? What does that stand for?
T stands for triangular. R stands for rectangle.
That's a good assessment. Good assessment.
3 means 3 angles.
Okay, that's a good assessment. Now, for years, for decades,
yes,
credit has to go to Edgar Fouché for being the first person to come out about the TR-3B back in 1998 at the International UFO Congress in Laughlin, Nevada. He has to get credit for this.
Yes.
TR-3B does not stand for tactical reconnaissance, as we had thought before.
Okay.
According to Edgar, it stands for Teledyne Ryan, which is a contractor based out of San Diego. They eventually merged with Teledyne to become Teledyne Ryan. According to Edgar, that is the contractor for the TR-3B.
So it's named after his name. It
comes in two sizes, 300 feet per side, 600 feet per side, operated by the CIA and the National Reconnaissance Office. It uses a magnetic field disruptor, according to Edgar Fouché, where they're taking a liquid mercury plasma, they're pressurizing it to 250,000 atmospheres, and they're rotating it at 50,000 RPM. The result of that is that there is a warpage of the localized gravity field by up to 89%. That means that the G-forces on the pilots are reduced by 89%. So they can pull 40 Gs, and it's no problem. They can handle it. That's the assessment by Edgar Fouché. So this shows you what the crew compartment looks like. When you have something 600 feet per side, this could be used as an interplanetary cargo ship. You could fit a lot of people in something that large. This shows you the location of the magnetic field disruptor and the bottom section here with the dimension 300 to 600 feet per side.
Approximately how many people can fit into this vehicle? Approximately how many people, like roughly?
Well over 500. Well over 500. No doubt about it. Well over 500. Very large cargo ship. So now let's move on to this craft. This is a case by David Marler as well. November 22nd, 1985. This craft was seen over Madison, Wisconsin. About 40 feet across, and he noticed a very interesting configuration. Let me read you what he said here. This is coming directly from the report. I'm not making this up. This is what the report says. On November 22nd of 1985, a Wisconsin state employee observed a black flying triangle gliding slowly over Highway CV, some 15 miles northwest of Madison, Wisconsin. The object was approximately 40 feet across and 90 feet in length. The underside of the craft, listen to this, resembled the back of a refrigerator, like a collection of condensation pipes that ran back and forth. So I ask you, does this sound like an alien spacecraft to you with refrigerator pipes on the bottom section? No. This is not alien. What we could be looking at here...
Are they going interdimension?
We could be looking at liquid nitrogen cooling pipes for a superconductor. That's what we could be looking at.
Are they going
purpose?
Are they going interdimension or?
I don't know. I don't know. It's possible, but I don't know. Very difficult to say what they might be doing. Now, just to reinforce this, I've got a case here. This came from the QFOS archives, that Center for UFO Studies in Chicago. This was March 5th, 2003, Helena, Missouri. Gentleman saw this big triangle fly directly over his house. It had crossbeam and girder construction, and he also said that it had rivets fastening this craft together. Let me read you what he says here. Craft caused pictures to fall off living room wall and shook entire house as it passed by. So this is very big aircraft. 1 football field in length. Now, what did this thing look like? Here's what it looked like right here. I can give you the blueprints for this one. It had a big light on the bottom of it that was elliptic or long, elongated slot look. But again, he said that it had these rivets, what he termed rusty bridge rivets, fastening this thing together. I ask you, does this sound like an alien spacecraft to you with rivets? No. No. We're dealing with a man-made technology here. This is his original sketch. This is his original sketch of the craft, what it looked like. So here is his original report written to J. Allen Hynek, who passed away in '86. So this guy's way late getting this letter to him. But if you put this together, you get the original sketch right here. I didn't make any of this up. Let me read you what he says here. It says, this looked like rivets from old bridge. The UFO looked like it all over with rivets, rusty-looking steel rivets, like coming from a bridge. So if you're familiar with New York, New Jersey area at all, there's something there called the George Washington Bridge. If you've ever gone across the George Washington Bridge, that's exactly what this craft looked like, with all these triangular gussets and these reinforcing rivets. That's what this craft looked like. So we're not dealing with alien technology here. We're dealing with a man-made technology. So let's do another case. Let me show you another case here. This was seen, this is back in 1985, Yorktown Heights, New York. A reference librarian saw this particular craft. She was waiting for her husband at a bus stop when this thing was by. Take a guess, Marty. Take a guess on how big this one was. Just take a guess.
600 feet, probably.
Nope. She said that this was about 800 feet across, hovering silently near her location, and then out of nowhere, this circular opening kind of just became apparent on the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then this red orb came up right inside that opening. And what's different is she was below this craft. She got a look inside the craft.
Yes.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
And what she described when looking inside is this. This is what she said it looked like inside the craft. There was these multiple tiered sections, like a terraced apartment complex with these balconies and lights on these balconies. That's what she said this craft looked like. 800 feet across, hovering silently over Yorktown Heights, New York. This is November 1985. Here's the drawing I put together.
So there should be more people to see this. There should be more people to see this. Yes.
Yep, massive, massive.
Very
craft.
big, yeah.
Huge craft, huge craft. So that's kind of a brief overview of the Black Triangles. Here's another one that was seen over I-94, 2001, another Black Triangle case. They've been seen all around the world since 1974. Of course, there's earlier cases than that that's talked about by David Marler. But we're looking at a very interesting technology. We're seeing tubes, pipes, cylinders. We're seeing cross-beam and girder construction. We're seeing rivets. We're seeing electrochromic panels on the bottom of these. Looking at this for 30 years now, it's very clear that we have black budget aircraft posing as extraterrestrial vehicles to hide their own deep black programs. They want people to think that these are alien as a cover to hide their own deep black programs. That's what it looks like to me after looking at it for 30 years now. That's what we're looking at here.
So where can we find their base? I mean, these vehicles are so big, they must have a base somewhere in the country.
Right. Well, keep in mind, if you have something 800 feet across,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't need to always be 800 feet across. It could fold up on itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making it only 200 feet. So you wouldn't need a huge hangar. Also, we need to keep in mind the fact that these craft could be underwater as well. They could be based out of Catalina Island. They could be based underwater somewhere. They don't need a hangar with this kind of technology. If that's true, then the bets are off. It could be as large as you want. The other thing to keep in mind, too, is you were talking about the March 13th, 1997 Phoenix Lights craft, right?
Yes.
This was seen by thousands of eyewitnesses on the night of March 13th, 1997. So what was this craft? Multiple eyewitnesses saw tubes, pipes, and cylinders on the bottom of this vehicle as well. But I want to bring your attention to a very interesting report. I'll see if I can find it in the binder here. That rose a very interesting point when it comes to the boomerangs, specifically the Belgian, the Phoenix Lights craft. Now, one thing we want to keep in mind, though, is the actual event took place in Henderson, Nevada, and went all the way down to Tucson, Arizona. So how do you get flares from Henderson, Nevada, going all the way down to Tucson? Flares only describe a portion of the event that night. Flares don't describe everything that took place that night. No doubt about it. This is the illustration that my good friend Tom Bogan put together. This is where the event started in Henderson, Nevada. This is the diagram here. This is going to be kind of hard to see, but this shows you where it started. It shows you the times, the dates, the locations, what was seen by the eyewitnesses, all the way up here going over Phoenix, 8:35, 8:40, and then ending here, Davis Mountain Air Force Base, 9:30 p.m. on the same night. So, what is the possible explanation for what we're looking at here? Let me bring your attention to something called the Air Force 2025 report. This is kind of a report with what the Air Force would like to see in their inventory for the year 2025. Now, Section 5.6 says the following: Airborne holographic projector. This is the description. The holographic projector displays a three-dimensional visual image in a desired location removed from the display generator. The projector can be used for psychological operations and strategic perception management. It is also useful for optical deception and cloaking, providing a momentary distraction when engaging an unsophisticated adversary. So what this document is describing is an airborne holographic projector. So what does that mean? It means that you could have a triangle flying over Phoenix at 90,000 feet, projecting an image of a boomerang below, okay? And this thing is flying below the major triangle up here. You could project any image you want. You could project an image of a stealth bomber, a stealth fighter, a triangle, a boomerang. You could project any image you want. So there's no telling what they could do at this point. No telling at all what they could do. That's something we need to keep in mind.
Great.
Yep. So, we've done a kind of a good overview of the triangles, the boomerangs, the stealth aircraft. We've talked about the models that you can build. So that's really kind of a general overview of what we're looking at right here.
Thank you. That's very good information. And there are quite a lot of vehicles. I believe they are all the same technologies built into different shape,
That's possible.
very close technology. Maybe
very
different
possible.
models. And then Ben Rich also say that right now we have technology to bring alien home. So those are the vehicles probably capable
Well,
to
let
take
me,
it.
since you mentioned Ben Rich, let me give you a couple of other quotes by Ben here, because I put together a listing of his statements. So these are statements by Ben Rich.
Yes.
These can be verified. This was UCLA presentation 32393. I'm not going to read them all, but we'll rip through them here. It says, "We now have the technology to take ET back home." This is 32393. "We now know how to travel to the stars. We already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects, and it would take an act of God to get them out to benefit humanity." Here's one, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base slide presentation, September 22nd, 1992. Quote, "We did the F-104, C-130, U-2, SR-71, F-117, and many other programs that I can't talk about. We are still working very hard. I just can't tell you what we're doing." So it's very clear. Lockheed Skunk Works has for decades been working on super secret classified programs that have no congressional oversight, no public scrutiny at all. They've made the breakthrough. They've got the technology.
That's what you were thinking. Thank you very much. I appreciate for your words.
Thank you. Yes.
And I believe we finish our interview, and you
Sure.
definitely give us a lot of information. And I do like your blueprints for some of these
Yes.
vehicles.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And we'll talk to you next time.
Okay.
Anything
Take care.
else?
Thank you.
Okay, that's all. Thank you. Bye-bye.结束了，全部关掉。